Hey, Steve Saretsky here. As always, Canadian real estate market update with a particular focus on Vancouver. If you're getting sort of value entertainment out of these videos, all I ask you hit thumbs up and subscribe. Questions, comments, put those below. I just released my recent interview actually with Keith Dicker of IceCap Asset Management is now live on the Real Vision platform. So super excited and honored to be invited onto the platform to do that interview with Keith. Highly encourage you to check it out. I highly encourage you to subscribe to Real Vision. I've been subscribed for probably 4 or 5 years now, and I would say by far it's probably one of the better investments of my life personally. And just the amount of wealth and accumulation of knowledge from that platform has been amazing. What I want to do here is obviously appreciate the community and the channel that we're growing here. So I do want to give back, and so I'm going to be offering. I'll give away one free annual subscription here for Real Vision to one of our viewers here. So if you want that Real Vision subscription, comment below. Tell me why you want it, why you deserve it, and I'll just pick someone. But what I want to do as well is take a little sneak peek here from our recent interview, because I think it kind of frames up this week's thoughts and comments. So here's a little piece of my interview with Keith right here.
Just for everyone outside of Canada, especially to understand, prior to the pandemic, the Bank of Canada held effectively zero federal government bonds. And that's the zero QE program running, and that was it. Over 12 months, it went from zero to almost 44% of owning. So to put it another way, they went from holding zero of Canadian federal government bonds to owning 44% of all debt that's outstanding by Ottawa. I mean, that is a shocking number. So whereas the Americans have been in QE now for 12 plus years, the Japanese for 25 years, the Europeans, they own hard at it as well. Same with the British and the Swiss. Canada just went boom. They turned it on immediately, and what they did, it absolutely helped the economy start functioning again. But what they also did, that people don't realize, they went to the banks on day one. This is last March, as soon as the pandemic and the shutdown started happening. They said, hey, if you want to sell us any mortgages, we'll buy them from you at par price effectively. You decide what you want to give us, and we'll take it. So, of course, the banks would say, yeah, sure, you take this all day long. And at the same time, one of the provinces, Newfoundland, they just happened to be unlucky. They were first up to issue debt during the dark days last March. And it was impossible in the world. Nobody was going to lend them anything. So, Ottawa had to call the Bank of Canada and say, hey, we need you to start, not only your QE program, we buy federal debt, we need you to buy provincial debt as well.
Of course, we all know one of the largest benefactors of this liquidity sloshing around the markets, this essentially free money flowing through the economy. Obviously, we know a lot of that went into the housing market. And so lo and behold, over the last 12 months, the typical home in Canada has had a return of just shy of $180,000 in 1 year. So again, if you look at the data, that certainly suggests that your house is earning a hell of a lot more than the average Canadian. So, you can see why you're now having, again, when you get those kind of returns in a year, you tend to attract more and more capital and more human resources into that space too. And obviously that's why you see, I know I'm looking at the data, is you're seeing, registrations for the number of realtors climbing, mortgage brokers, everybody trying to get into basically the gold rush. And so again, I personally see this as a slippery slope. Obviously, when you get this kind of accumulation in one space, I mean, it's not an overly productive part of the economy. But again, this is what the government is doubling down on. And again, I'm not talking about this on how I wish it was, but I just look at it and say every government comes out. So now we have, of course, we have Daddy Trudeau out this past week, ironically, coming out and saying that he is putting together this, he's going to help municipalities tackle rising high house prices, and that we're going to start to, get this figured out. But, I have to laugh because I go back and look at this guy's comments. In 2015, just several months before he was elected, he said, and I quote, "The reality is that too many Canadians cannot afford to buy a house. If there are issues of speculation, then yes, the federal government has potential tools to step in." This is in 2005, just months before he was elected. I think everybody is well aware what's happened to house prices pretty much across Canada over the last 6 years. It has been unprecedented, unbelievable pace of home price appreciation. So again, talk is cheap. It's just politicians. It doesn't matter who gets in. The system is larger than one single individual. In fact, let's also clip here to the now Finance Minister of Canada, Chrystia Freeland's comments in 2015.
Center.
Mr. Speaker, the IMF has issued a warning about the inflated Canadian housing market, cautioning that home prices have jumped more than 60% over the past 15 years. Canadian families with a personal debt burden, the IMF warns, is among the highest in the OECD, are at risk of $100,000 losses they can ill afford. The IMF says Canada needs better data, something this government is bizarrely opposed to, and more coordinated financial oversight. When will this government quit electioneering and fear-mongering and table a budget that addresses Canada's cooling economy and overheated housing market?
So part of the problem here is that everybody wants to talk about it and rally off a bunch of stats. Wow, Canadians have too much debt. We really should do something. House prices are too high. They're not affordable. Wages aren't going up. But nothing ever changes. Again, it doesn't matter what political party is in power, and that's unfortunately a sad reality I want to emphasize, because I think there's a lot of people sitting on their hands and going like this and hoping that the government is going to come in and fix the problem. The government is the problem. And so one of the problems here in reality, so, again, Trudeau comes out this past week and says, oh, we're going to do something, ignore what I said 6 years ago. We're going to do something, but, residential investment in Canada was responsible for 54% of GDP growth in the first quarter of 2021. So housing is literally the only thing that is actually driving growth. It is the majority driver of growth. Residential investment, 54% of GDP growth in the first quarter. And of course, here we can see residential investment as a whole continues to drive most of the growth. So what we have here is residential investment accounted for 54% of GDP and is now an unprecedented 10.3% of total GDP. 10.3% of total GDP charts, courtesy of my good buddy Ben Rabideau of Edge Analytics and North Cove Advisors, who we're going to be having on the show next week. Very much looking forward to that. So I highly encourage you, as always, to tune in, subscribe as you get the notifications. But that's kind of my thoughts this week. Just looking at the recent comments coming on the housing space. We had some inflation CPI numbers coming in. We had another jobs miss. Again, this just basically gives the Bank of Canada a bunch of air cover, right? Jobs miss, the unemployment rate at 8.2%. You have a bunch of CPI measurements which are heavily manipulated. I mean, shelter costs, they say, are up 3% year over year. Food costs, they had up 0.9% year over year. It says, where is Stats Canada shopping? Stats Canada is eating Samsung TVs or what? There's nobody out there that is seeing their food costs go up by less than 1% from last year. I mean, every aisle I go down in the grocery store, the prices are up. They're up a lot more than 0.9%. But again, I don't know what that term is about statistics and lies, but I'll be damned. So anyways, that's all I got for this week. As always, appreciate the support. See you next week.